This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Well, my clock indicates the hour of 7 has come, so I will officially open this meeting. The Plan Commission, I am Greg Granlund, the Vice Chair, filling in the second time I've done this, so please bear with me. I'd like to greet everyone and thank you all for your participation. It's an important event to have the public have their input to these sessions. 3 of the items on today's agenda have opportunity for public discussion as well as the commission itself. The 4th item on our list is only for discussion by the council, but you're welcome to stay and listen. This meeting is broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994. WRFP-LP 101.9 FM and is available online through valleymediaworks.org. We attempt to conduct our hearings in a relatively informal manner, but we also try to be fairly efficient and straightforward and save everyone as much time as we can. In each opportunity, usually the city will provide some input on the project or projects. Several of these are complicated enough. We'll have 2 different representatives from the city start the discussion. Then we will have the applicant speak to the issue. After that, we will have the public opportunity, and then finally, during the voting process, the commission will discuss it. At each of those points, discussion or questions may come from the commission to anyone who is speaking. We'd like to try to be as effective as possible with the public input as well, and that try to avoid unnecessary repetition. We know lots of people would like to express their opinions. We appreciate people have common opinions. And so if you can come forward briefly and state your agreement with something rather than get too elaborate, as I think I currently am. Prudent use of time. We'll try to discuss all items equally without getting to that point in the evening where we're too tired to come to any agreement. Please turn off your cell phones or turn them to silent so we're not interrupted. If you are planning on speaking, I think I've seen a lot of you already collect the yellow forms on the back table and fill them out. It helps everyone keep an accurate record and spell names correctly. When they're finished, they can be handed to Ryan Petrie over at the table there in the blue shirt. And then as you come forward to speak, please introduce yourself with your full name and your address so we get a relationship of where you are compared to the project location. We will occasionally have to step in and limit discussion if it carries on too long when we have controversial items with a large crowd. We'd like to see if we can keep things short. So with that said, we are ready for our first item, which is our recommendation to the City Council for rezoning at Jeffers Ridge Twin Homes from R1A to R2P zoning. Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Again, for the benefit of those in the audience, I'm Scott Allen, Community Development Director for the City of Eau Claire. I'll be joined by Deputy City Engineer Leah Ness here shortly to talk more about the engineering related items. But to introduce the application and the item for your consideration, this is a request to rezone property east of Jeffers Road, north of Jeffers Ridge from R1A to R2P, and to adopt the general development plan for twin homes and to approve the preliminary plat for what is called Jeffers Ridge Twin Homes. It should be noted that the preliminary plat will also serve as the general development plan, so they are one and the same in your packet and the information provided here this evening. The area in question is just over 21 acres in size. It is currently vacant. You can see here. And again, being proposed for residential twin homes throughout the property. In fact, the applicant is proposing 80 lots for twin homes. So again, 80 units or 40 parcels plus or minus again, but essentially again 80 lots specifically for one per individual unit. That is shown here. So again, I said 40, but again, it's technically 80 because each individual unit has its own individual lot. There are 2 outlots being proposed as well as a 15-foot wide pedestrian easement between, if you see there on the east side, between lots 10 and 11. A little bit hard to see on the drawing, but there's a proposed 15-foot wide pedestrian easement which would access to the east the Northwest Community Park. This item was reviewed last week by Waterways and Parks Commission as well. They recommend approval. There are a number of conditions that staff is recommending as condition of approval. And again, I'll mention those briefly and then turn it over to Ms. Ness to provide additional information. They're mentioned on the first page of your staff report, referencing a development agreement for various engineering-related items, including submitting proposed street names and submitting detailed calculations for stormwater, and then finally information regarding proposed street grades. So with that, you can see here more generally reference of those who were notified for this public hearing for the rezoning. I believe that concludes my presentation. Stand for any questions before I turn it over to Ms. Ness, if there are any questions.
Any questions from the commission? I see none.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to touch on a couple topics I had calls on this week related to the development, and one is the construction of Jeffers Road. The State Transportation Improvement Project is being funded for the 2020-2021 year, with construction taking place in 2021 at this time. Jeffers Road will be reconstructed from 312 to the north to County Line Road, and is proposed to have a single lane in each direction, bike lanes, sidewalk on one side, and a multi-use path on the other side. In relationship, or to discuss the drainage a little more, Mr. Allen had talked about the 2 outlots. I just wanted to point out that drainage is planned to utilize both of those outlots, and then also an easement for access is in the highlighted areas. And then also Mr. Allen had mentioned the pedestrian easement between lots 10 and 11 to access the park. So those were the transportation and drainage items that I wanted to touch on. If you have any questions, I'd take them.
Questions from the commission? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Okay.
With that, we typically will hear from the applicant. Is there a representative?
Good evening. My name is Sean Bohan, 1504 Sherwin Avenue, Eau Claire. I'm the engineer that's working on the project. As Mr. Allen and Ms. Ness ended up stating, there are a couple of conditions of which our client is not opposed to. So I'm just here to end up answering any questions that you may end up having. And then also, if there's questions that we might be able to answer after anyone from the audience comes up and speaks and stuff, we'd certainly like that ability to come back up. Maybe it'll end up helping clear up some of the questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Peterson?
Yes, you're requesting a reduced front yard setback to 25 feet?
That is correct.
And how does that relate to the wetland?
Well, As far as, we have the wetland that ends up falling in the center. What we're trying to do is get the buildings a little bit further away from the wetland. There was a couple of them. There's also the power line easement that ends up falling along the park also. So we're trying to end up having those buildings sit back. And it does follow pretty closely with the subdivision or with the subdivision to the north on Camden, where we were asking for some reduced setbacks and stuff on that also.
Okay, in addition to that, with the subdivision to the north, they have sidewalks. Why are you requesting not to have sidewalks down here?
We're not requesting not to have sidewalks. We're having it on both sides.
Okay, so you're going to have sidewalks?
Correct.
Okay, with the sidewalks in there, with a 25-foot setback, you're going to have minimal amount of room between the garages and the sidewalk to store a vehicle.
We'll have one vehicle length, correct. I mean,
Okay.
we'll have 26 feet from the garage, minimum of 26 feet to the garage to the back of the sidewalk.
Okay. I'm mistaken if I read you were proposing no sidewalks. but
That's okay.
I think they're needed out there. Thank you.
I believe, if I may, Mr. Chair, Mr. Peterson, I believe that, yeah, there's a kind of a generic comment under streets talking about all requests for sidewalk deferral must be made in writing. If there was just a generic reference that if that were to happen, there's a certain process. But yeah, there's not one being proposed by the applicant at this point.
Other questions from the council? Thank you, sir. Now
Thank you.
we will open this to the public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this issue from the audience? Not, yes, please. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jeff Schweiner. I live at 5455 Benjamin Street, which is in the Shorewood Heights area. We have, in Shorewood Heights, we have concerns about the traffic, the volume of traffic that's on Jeffers Road now, and it's only being compounded by the Camden Place and now the Jeffers Twin Homes. And both of these were zoned for single family, and they're both trying to be rezoned for twin homes, which actually doubles the amount of traffic that's on that street. So what I did is I put together a little chart. You probably know a lot of this, but Shorewood Heights, what I did is I mapped the number of units, and I'm defining a unit as either a half of a twin home or an apartment or a single-family home. So I consider a unit is a housing for a single family. And then what I wanted to do was count the number of units that are between the North Crossing and Shorewood Drive. And the table here kind of goes through, starting at the North Crossing, Jeffers Road, single roads. We have the apartments, Steffi, the Jeffers Twin Project, Camden Place, et cetera. And what I come up with is, and I'm assuming full capacity of all existing lots, future lots, and vacant lots. So this is really a chart of the maximum number of units that could be there and how many, what's the traffic volume going to be based on that quantity of units. And again, I come up with a total number of 1,144. That is assuming that there's an average of 2 vehicles per unit. And another thing I wanted to throw out is adding the 2 new single-family conversion to twin homes is adding an additional 362 units, which is a traffic increase of 32% before these developments were there 3 years ago. If we break down the types of units, single family, there's only 22%. Twin homes is 36%. Duplexes are 4.5%. Apartments are 36.5%. So it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that this is just a very large percentage are twin homes, duplexes, apartments, and there is a lack of single-family homes in this area. If we didn't rezone this lot, we would save 40 units, figuring 2 cars per unit, that'd be 80 less vehicles traveling on that road. That's the reason we don't want it rezoned. I also wanted to point out that in addition to the units, there's additional things that are causing traffic on that. We have Aspen Meadows, which is a quarter-mile north on Jeffers Road. We got the new baseball park, which cars are parking in the street because the parking lot can't hold them all. We have box sanitation, yard waste, and people use that corner of North Crossing to get to the Tech College as well. The other thing that makes this, in my mind, a little inconvenient is there is only really one alternate route, at least that I'm aware of, and that is to go to County Line Road, take that east to Highway T, which is Claremont, take that down, and from there you can go south of that intersection. So that's the reason the volume of traffic is concerning to us. A lot of us feel that it's very busy right now. There may be a safety concern involved with that if people are trying to pull out of the entrances from all of these twin homes, et cetera, to beat the traffic. That is our concern. We're also concerned about during the construction phase, there will be times where all traffic will have to be routed up to County Line Road, and that's just going to put a lot of volume. That's going to put 1,144, it won't be that number, it'll be a little bit less because it's not fully developed, but it's just going to put a ton of traffic on Shorewood Heights Road because that's the only way you can get there if you don't have access to 312. And then one question I have that I'm trying to find out is the construction that starts in 2021, as I'm told, is it going to be completed in 2021 or does that carry over into multiple years? So I don't know if anybody can answer that in the room or not.
I've been told that it should last one construction season. They should be
One?
able to complete the project in 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
That's the Jeffers Road reconstruction
Yes,
project.
yes.
The
not
Jeffers Road.
Not
Right.
the general. Okay.
So that's all I had. I don't know if there's any questions, comments.
Any have questions from the council? No? Thank you very much for your,
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
information.
Good evening. My name is William Nimitz. I live at 5451 Benjamin Street here in Eau Claire, and my concern is the abundance of duplexes we are getting in this area. I'm not against new construction. I'm for development. As Jeff mentioned, the single-family homes are right around 22% of the homes in this area. The need for single-family homes is great, and I think we all know that single-family homes are the cornerstone of our community. In fact, probably many of us, or most of us, grew up in single-family homes. We have a lot of good memories there. We need a good balance of homes for this added stability, where a family's needs can grow along with the opportunity for them to move to a larger home. The single-family homes greatly attract families. I know they attracted me moving here 39 years ago from Chicago. And they attract families. It represents stability, vigor, and vitality for our community, in our area. I don't want to see us lose this as we keep building more and more multifamily units. Of course we do need them. However, we do need single-family homes where people can transition from the multi-units as our families grow. And I see that we are losing that. I hate to see these families move. I was told, a few years ago, as you can see probably the date on here is last year. I was here last year. I can show you the area where the single-family homes are. I can show you the area where the duplexes are, more duplexes, and multifamily units here, 3plexes, 4plexes, 6plexes, and duplexes. And the new development that just went in by C&M Builders, they have built some very charming, nice single-family homes there, but we definitely need more of them. And now this area is going to be duplexes. I don't want to see our families, these families as they grow, move out of our area, uproot their kids from the schools and from their friends and from their neighbors. I'd rather have single-family homes that they can transition into. I hope we can find a way to work together to have these homes for everybody in their availability. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I don't see any, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Is it Mr. Nimitz?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you continue to refer to these as duplexes, but it's actually for twin homes, which are owned properties,
Well,
and do provide that asset building for families to move forward.
I knew you were talking about duplexes. I know there's different ways, your verbiage here is the verbiage. And even in our newspaper this weekend, they call them duplexes. I call them duplexes. We don't call them tripleplexes or triplets. We might call them quad homes if they're 4 homes. But duplexes are duplexes. I worked construction all my life. And
The only
I worked-
reason I bring that point up is I certainly agree with the point you make about giving families the opportunity to build an asset and move up in their ability to have a larger home. So this twin homes actually does serve that purpose, where duplexes that are typically rental do not.
If you drive through our neighborhood, it's really interesting. What I did the other night is I drove through our neighborhoods. And right after the school, about an hour after the school bus came, and in the single-family homes, you could see the kids out playing in the yards. I went through the area where the multiplex homes were and where the duplexes were, and the kids weren't playing out. How did I know there were kids living here? Because I saw their toys in their driveways. They were close together. Kids have the opportunity to play in yards. I mean, I hope we all had the opportunity. We loved it, and I don't want to lose it. That's why I'm here speaking about my concerns in my community tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional persons who wish to speak to this item? Thank you, sir. Please come forward.
Hi there, Steve Wiggins, 3560 Sharon Drive. I, of course, am the applicant, and I feel like I want to set the record straight. So, twin home and a duplex are two very different things. Twin home, of course, has 2 parcel numbers, 2 owners. A duplex is 1 parcel number, same owner both sides. Traditionally, a rental, you wouldn't have ownership of your own side of a duplex, but you would of a twin home. The twin home environment, of course, has replaced the condominiums that we were building many of a decade ago. This project is planned to be a twin home neighborhood in an HOA for common lawn and snow removal. The people who live in the neighborhood that's been referred, of course, drive past our other project, which is Green Park Drive. And I feel the people that live in Green Park Drive would most likely be offended by most of these comments that they don't live in a nice single-family home. So obviously the twin home does offer more affordability. And again, there is certainly a large group of the buyer pool that is an empty nester buyer pool that is buying the twin homes.
Any questions from the council?
Good.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this item? Then at this point is when we usually ask for a motion so that we begin our own discussion. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll move recommendation.
I second.
Thank you. So is there comments is there discussion among the commission? Does not appear to be any further. Yes.
I really appreciate all of the residents that are here to pay attention to what's happening in our neighborhoods as we grow. This area off Jefferson Road really draws a lot of attention because of how quickly it's developed over the past few years. I think that the builders, the number of developers that paid attention in the last year to the development, and this concern about the density, the traffic impact has really informed what is coming to the city at this point, which is twin homes. I liked in the packet that very specifically talked about how this would be managed so that the upkeep is appropriate and attractive. They're addressing the water concerns. I'm in favor of this, but I am very sensitive to the community that's in the midst of a lot of change. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I can support this because, in part because the city has been, involved in, particular with, making sure some of the transportation infrastructure in the area is going to be upgraded within the next few years as well. And the park is going to see some, some more planning efforts to really solidify the Northwest Park as well. And obviously this is planning for good connections to it. I do wish, we had already had this project done already on Jeffers Road, because there have been some challenges over the last 5 or 10 years. And but I think it'll come soon enough, and that's one of the reasons why I can support this, is because we're going to have a reconstructed Jeffers Road. But it does start raising the question about whether and when we're going to bring public transit to that area, and that's obviously a major expense for the community. So just there's a lot of change going on right now, and I think I can support this at this time, partly because it's sort of a transitional neighborhood between, the more higher density apartments to the south and the highway to the south, and some more single family houses to the north. So,
Thank you, Mr. Gregor. I would just want to comment briefly too that in the course of the zoning, we've typically tried to find ways to make buffered approaches between the highest densities and the lower densities. They're further away. And with this, it's in a way a little bit disappointing to have an infill happen that's closer to that higher density end, because it's appropriate for it to be higher density as a buffering point between an even higher density in the apartments and the lower densities that have already been built further north of this. So it fits our logic, and I hope that we're not just being trapped by our own logic, but there's the expectation that when you have higher densities and lower densities, there's a gradation from one to the next, and this seems to be an appropriate level of density between a higher and a lower use, even though it does end up with more vehicles finally using this empty parcel for their living space. With that, is there any further? Yes, Mr. Peterson.
I agree with Mr. Granlund that you need to go from the higher density to the lower density, and this is part of that transition. And to me, twin homes, when they first came up in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, I believe, that's the first I heard about them. Technically, they're single-family homes that have an abutting wall to each other instead of a 20-foot grass strip in between. So they're really single-family homes in that each of the twin homes is owned by separate people as opposed to duplexes, which are normally rentals. So I'm going to be in favor of this, and I think with the project proposed for Jeffers Road that it takes into account not only this traffic from this subdivision, but future traffic up the road. I'm sure you've gone out to a 20-year extrapolation on traffic. So I'm going to support this.
Is there further comment? Yes, Commissioner.
I would just like to add that we do have a lack of affordable single-family units in our community, and this would help to provide that.
Any further comments, discussion? It looks like we're ready to call this to a vote. So those are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 2 on our agenda concerns the Zoning request for 2 parcels located at 3141 Hastings Way and 3130 Fern Court from an R1 to an R2 occupancy. Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you again, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Again, before you this evening is request to rezone 2 parcels. As already noted, is a area map showing the approximate location, especially in relation to Hastings Way and then Fern Court on the south. It's an aerial map. It's already a little bit out of date because there are some duplex development already immediately to the north and east of the subject properties. So with this, just again a little bit more specific site plan or site map. The properties in question total 0.73 acres in size. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from current R1 to R2 to allow for duplex construction. The comprehensive plan does identify this area as being appropriate for low-density residential. Proposed R2 zoning duplex home is considered low-density residential by that definition. A property consists of 2 separate but adjacent parcels, shows a little bit more highlighted here. Staff believes the rezoning request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and compatible with surrounding land uses. You may recall immediately again to the north and east, similar property request, rezoning request came forward about this time last year, actually, I think last summer. A bit more what the applicant is proposing. You see lot 1 there has an existing home. Because of the reduction in the overall lot size as a result of the proposed reconfiguration, that's why the applicant is requesting to rezone all the property. So not proposing any changes to that existing single-family home, simply rezoning that to R2 to allow for the smaller lot size for the existing single-family house. So again, a little bit of reshuffling some of the lot lines as such as related to the properties immediately facing North Hastings Way or the frontage road there. And hopefully this is fairly clear. Any questions before I turn it over to the applicant and those in the audience? Again, this is a public hearing for the rezoning.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes, Mr. Allen, both properties would access the North Hastings Way East Frontage Road then?
Correct.
As
yes.
opposed to the original lot configuration, which showed kind of a stub coming off of Fern Court.
I see what you're saying there. Sure. Believe again with the reconfiguration, that's what you're seeing there. You can see the dashed line adjacent to what is shown as lot 1 that you're referring to. That would not be the access point for those duplexes.
Okay, because that would have been problematic to me. And
Correct,
I'm sure
correct.
to
And
the
again,
shed
no.
that's on the south side of that existing house on the end of Fern Court. So.
Yeah, very good question. The same again, property immediately to the north and east there, access is the same and is a newly constructed duplex as well.
Okay.
So this is in line with what is actually already occurring in that area.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. There appears to be a line that I can't read with my glasses that's a diagonal. Is it overhead power? Is it a utility line that runs diagonally across the 2 new parcels that are off North Hastings?
Sure. I may defer to the applicant in terms of what the proposed relocation may occur, but it's identified as overhead line.
Okay.
And it's identified as being to be moved by others, so I'm not sure if that's as a part of the development.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? No, thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Scott.
Thank you.
So this means it is now the applicant's turn to speak. If the applicant would step forward, please. No representative here tonight. Then it would be open for the public to discuss this item if there's someone wishing to discuss this item from the public. Yes, sir, please come forward.
My name is Dan Sessions. I live at 3127 Fern Court, which happens to be the house on the end of the cul-de-sac on Fern Court. And that red line supposedly is supposed to be a road. I've lived in the house since 1993. This one right there. I've lived in the house since 1993, and when I bought the house, I was told that it was supposed to be a road easement, and my question was why they were taking such a small lot, because their driveway comes right off the road, or right off the end of the cul-de-sac. Because I've only got probably 15 feet of curb space, and when I plow in front of my driveway or in front of my mailbox, I take it right down their driveway and plow it on the end of their house or out in their yard. So they've never plowed since I've been there, because I've taken care of their driveway, because I just don't like snow in front of my mailbox. That was the only question I had, was why they were rezoning that R2, and it was explained to me before the meeting. So, I got no qualms with them building doing the duplex down in that lower lot, because that doesn't even butt my property, except now with the new lot lines, it might be about 4 or 5 feet or whatever. And I was talking to Mr. Petrie here, and they're gonna look into vacating that roadway, supposedly. So that was the only question I had, why they are rezoning that to R2 when the lot isn't that big. I know, because I live right next to it. So, thank you.
Any questions for the first comment? No, thank you very much, sir, for coming forward. With that, is there anyone else who wish to discuss this item in public? Seeing no further effort to come forward, it is open for a motion. Mr. Peterson.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Greger. So with that, are there comments and discussion from the commission? Mr. Peterson, or I'm sorry, you were won out by Ms. Christopherson.
Thank you. I just want to support this, particularly as I've driven along Hastings Way on the north side. I always thought that was a lot of property that could be backfilled for beautiful homes. I'm really glad to see that some people are taking advantage of that access to the city.
Thank you. And Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, when I went out and reviewed this, I drove into Fern Court and looked down at where this access would come off of Fern Court according to what's up on the monitor now, and I'm thinking that's really going to be a problem. But since both of the lots are coming off of the North Hastings Way frontage road, I see this as very workable, and hopefully they can vacate what is been set aside for right-of-way from Fern Court, and that can go back to the adjacent property owners, hopefully.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing no further comment from the commission, I would suggest we take this to a vote. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the same signal. And the motion is passed. Congratulations to the applicant for a successful application. The next item is another rezoning request. Property located on the south side of Highway 312, the North Crossing, west of Kane Road, from R2P to R3P, and to adopt a general development plan for various apartment building sizes. So, Mr. Petrie gets to introduce this one.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairperson, members of the commission, members of the public that are here. Ryan Petrie, one of the associated planners with the city. I will start the presentation from the staff. Ms. Leah Ness will take over from the engineering side of it, talking about drainage and parking and traffic and that fun stuff. Before you, on number 3, far west side of Eau Claire, S.C. Sidursky is the applicant and the property owner. The engineering on staff is Advanced Engineering Concepts. There's a large tract of land west of Kane Road, south of 312, Highway 12, North Crossing, across from a large corporation. To the east is Kane Road, like I mentioned, condo association and R3P zoning. To the south is Wild Ridge Golf Course and a church that's zoned R1. To the west is R2P, Some of it's vacant, some of it has single-family homes, some of it is a park. Also, there's along North Crossing is assisted living and memory care facilities. And then again to the north is outside the city limits, but that's Menards Corporation. You will note a parcel on the southwest corner of Kane Road and the North Crossing. That's zone currently C2P, owned by a different applicant. The parcel is approximately 108 acres. In your packet is well, let's start with here. This is what the map has been notified. We do a map of 300-foot radius around the property. It does include all the condo owners to the east. To the west, that neighborhood would not have gotten notified with the 300 map radius. People to the north and to the south would have been notified. Here's an aerial photograph showing the existing area, which is vacant, showing the golf course to the south, as you can see. To the north, you have the Menards complex. And to the west, you see some new development that has occurred over the past years. Tonight, you're looking at a general development plan for the 108 acres. The history of the property, it was annexed in the city of Eau Claire in 1980 from the town of Union. Originally, development plan was approval from this commission and also the council in 2003. Later, was sold and amended in 2004. The master plan subdivision had a variety of land uses, from single family to multifamily to commercial to open space and parkland. This area was included in that rezoning and general development plan in 2003 and 2004. Since that time, minimum development has occurred in this area. In 2017, some of the members of the commission were on this board. They did review it, and they were rezoning 54 acres at that time to R3P with a general development plan for 12 three-story apartments, 12 three-story building apartments for 618 dwelling units. With that being said, we'll move on to the general development plan as submitted by the applicant, which is shown on the screen at this time. The request is rezone from R2P to R3P and approve the general development plan for a variety of apartment buildings. Attached in your packet is the narrative concept map, proposed elevations, and general development plan provided by the applicant. Again, this is 108 acres. The remaining 25.6 acres approximately will remain R2P, which is on the southwest corner of the map. The plan land use map from the city comprehensive plan is shown on the map. As you note, on the east side, or the west side of Kane Road is for high-density residential. To the south of 31212 is shown as commercial. And then as you transition to the west and to the south, that would be low-density residential. We'll get into the community center, which is proposed shown on the elevations. We'll get into that just shortly. Let me go back to this map showing the access off of Kane Road, single point access into the development, public roads proposed throughout the development, and in a mixture of communities within the development. Staff would note that there is a variety of two different types of housing. There will be the apartments, which is a mixture of 4 units, 6 units, 8 units, 16 units, and 20-unit apartments. There also are proposing some duplexes on the far west side. The comprehensive plan calls for favorable review of projects with more than 2 housing types. The project does include two units adjacent to the single-family homes on the far west side, as I mentioned. The comprehensive plan does show this area as a transitional area between the commercial and the single-family homes, along with the condos to the east. In your report is noted from the engineering, and they will touch base on that, about street utilities and drainage and traffic, as Leo will mention here shortly. Also, it does, in the comprehensive plan, does talk about review of medium to high density residential as proposed. They talk about a variety of factors that come into play. I would just mention that this area has seen few highway businesses such as Quick Trip go in, along with few single family homes and 2 family homes. They have seen 2 nursing homes, assisted living's been in the last 3 years, 5 single family, three duplexes, and 3 twin homes. This year alone, they have seen 5 single-family go up, 3 duplexes, and no commercial at this time. The concern that staff has is the closest school is Sherman Elementary, which is about 3.7 miles away, and DeLong Middle School, along with Prairie Ridge Elementary. In the general development plan, we'll get into that shortly, but there's 7 different elevations that I'll show. The setbacks are noted at 30 feet on the front, 8 on the sides, and 25 on the rear. The setback along Kane Road shall be 30 feet, and along the north crossing should be 50 feet. The dwelling count is 564 units with on 108 acres. The dwelling units will be studio apartments, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, ranging from 650 to 1,700 square feet within the apartments. This is the first step in the process. The next step would be preliminary plat reviewed by this commission, along with final plat and site plans are viewed by this commission and council. The council would also review the final plat and developer's agreement at a later date. A trail is shown on the northeast side of the project, connecting from the one cul-de-sac to the next. Sidewalks are shown as well. They are showing plentiful of green space throughout. They are showing community center, as shown on the screen now. This would include the offices, maintenance shop, community room for rental, and fitness center. Now we'll get into the different types of housing that they're proposing as the general development plan. On your screen, it would be a single story, I would call these bay homes. These are different than duplexes. These are different than twin homes. This would be a 6-unit with 2 and 3 bedroom with a 2-car attached garage. Next on your screen would be a 2-story apartment complex, efficient apartments, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, all detached garages. Again, here's the general plan showing the layout. Going over, the next is a 2-story apartment with attached 1-car garages. Some more apartments proposed with attached garages and 2nd floor living space. Here's an 8-unit building showing with attached garages and a common courtyard area. Again, here would be a 4-unit showing attached garages and a 2nd floor living area as well. And then these would be the townhome styles with attached garages, 2 and 3 bedrooms. Here's an aerial photograph showing. The applicant is here and they can go over more detail within the site plans. Now, you're not reviewing the site plans tonight, but they wanted to show a concept layouts of what they would look like for the commission and for the public. The site is approximately, again, 108 acres for multifamily development with approximately 15 acres as common open space. The dwelling unit count is 564 dwellings, which is a density of 5.2 acres, 5 units per acre. The R3 density standard for your reference is 21 units per acre. Again, they're proposing a 30-foot setback off of Kane Road, a 50-foot setback off of the North Crossing, 312-12. All the other setbacks will meet the R3 district standards. Buffering, landscaping will all be reviewed with the site plan. The proposed elevations are 1 and 2-story apartments. Common open space will be at least 15%. Now that would be reviewed again by the site plans at a later date. Building space and orientation shall meet the multifamily design manual. The street and utilities are reviewed in the engineering report, which we'll get to. All landscaping, signage, lighting will be addressed in the site plan review process. Along the walking paths will be maintained privately, and sidewalks are shown on the preliminary general development plan. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Ness, and she can talk about the engineering report, which is attached in your packet as well, and then we'll both answer questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Good evening again. From the traffic side of things, I just wanted to talk about a draft TIA that was reviewed in 2017. It included analysis of US Highway 12 and Mill Run Road, which is traffic signalized controlled, US Highway 12 and County Trunk Highway TT, also signal controlled, and then the proposed development driveway with County Trunk Highway TT and Mill Ridge Circle, which would be a proposed two-way stop control, stopping traffic from Mill Run Ridge Circle and the proposed driveway. The TIA took into account the quick trip traffic that was being proposed at the time or constructed at the time, and that was included in the background traffic for the analysis. The overall development looked at 665 proposed units with a trip generation ranging from 295 to 355 trips during the peak hour. Overall, the analysis showed that during the peak period, queuing would occur on the north side of Old Mill Plaza or on Mill Run Road. So recommendations were provided to post a do not block intersection sign as you're traveling southbound on Mill Run Road. Otherwise, the queuing at the signalized intersections did not exceed the existing queue storage lengths. Looking at the trips generated, sometimes it's confusing that 300 to 350 trips being generated during the hour would mean there'd be 150 to 175 trips entering the development and exiting the development if it was a 50-50 split approximately. So that equates to about 6 vehicles entering, exiting the development per minute. So overall, not a large impact for the amount of area that we're looking at here. Trip distribution-wise, too, we looked at approximately 20% using the Mill Run Road intersection and the remaining percentage looking at the Kane Road intersection. And then the street and design, I just want to touch on that. County Trunk Highway TT, as Mr. Petrie had mentioned, is a county trunk highway roadway. Kane Road, it's a collector road. The county maintains the road at this point, and the development would have to ask for access. And we've discussed that as well as reviewed the TIA with the county and the state. At this point, we did discuss a full connection east-west with the development, and we'll work with them in the TIA analysis on that for when east-west connection needs to be finalized and during their phasing process of the development. And the table up here shows the transportation system plan from our comprehensive plan and the guidelines that we recommend on local streets, collector streets. Typically, our local streets and design levels are for 1,000 vehicles or less per day, and that has a certain right-of-way recommendation along with collectors and minor arterials and arterials. So that's the table that we reference when we're working with the development team on the street development. On the drainage side of things, I just wanted to mention that in 2018, we adopted an updated surface water management plan that was done for us by some consultants. There were recommendations within that plan that will be implemented starting, well, we've started implementing some of the recommendations, but one of the key recommendations from the plan was to have a detailed hydrologic and hydraulic model of the city's drainage system completed. We've incorporated that into our 2020 and 2021 budget. And then based on that analysis, there should be stormwater improvement recommendations. And in our 2024 to 2028 CIP process, those dollars have been allocated for. Our stormwater utility account can also address some of the recommendations that would be put forward from the modeling, and that is an annual reoccurring dollar amount each year in our CIP process. The city has been made aware of drainage issues in the area, specifically to the south and going north towards 312 with the drainage on the east side of Kane Road. We are requiring the developer to provide grading and drainage plans similar to any other construction development project that we have. And the developer has been given the previous stormwater reports that we have had provided to us for this area. Again, as we move forward with the modeling, that will give us further information on how to address current issues that are occurring out there, as well as design for future stormwater out there. Any questions for myself?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Ness. Just to kind of cut to the chase on the TIA then, is what the TIA is saying is that the existing streets could handle the increased traffic brought about by this development?
Exactly, yep.
That's what you're saying?
Right now, based on the 2018 traffic, with the full development in 2018, it would be able to handle the queuing and the delays at the intersections.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Christopherson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ness, at what level it is going to manage or handle the increased traffic? At what level or what grade would you consider? Did I see in this plan that it was at a C level of management?
Typically, we design for a level of service C or better. So if a development comes in and the level of service goes down to a level of service D, we ask them to provide recommended improvements to bring that delay, to decrease that delay and get that level of service back up to a C or better.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead.
I also am wondering about the drainage and what is the process, since there's some things that are already being analyzed and want to be improved, and they have some, those dates are really out there. So what responsibility does that leave with the developer to show that it doesn't exacerbate an issue that we're already working on?
We're really looking for the developer to show how they're going to manage the stormwater on their site and what their plan is for handling the water. If they are conveying it into our system, what design features are needed to handle that drainage.
So if during the acceptance process, we would see what their plan is and either stamp it approved or not? What I'm saying, I don't mean we, but.
Yes, we receive calculations on stormwater management, on best management practices that will be implemented with the stormwater basins, the sedimentation, infiltration calculations, and pipe sizing, and get into the details of the flow of the water and based off of certain storm events and look at those types of details to determine if the proposed facilities are adequate or if they need to be resized.
Other questions? Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ness, with the 350 vehicles per day during the peak hour, not per day, you said 175 in and 175 out. With this being a residential development, is that a true breakdown? Would it be 80-20 or 90-10?
I think, typically residential, it could range 60-40, but the TIA does analyze that breakdown. So it does take into account, it doesn't just split the peak hour traffic into 50-50. It analyzes the inflow and outflow from the development based off of the ITE standards for the developments.
One more question?
Yes, go ahead.
With the drainage, where does the drainage go from this property?
From this property, for the area, I don't have a map. It does, currently, what's being proposed is that there would be multiple facilities within the development that would hold and maintain the stormwater. There are 3 pipes that cross Kane Road currently, and water travels to the north and then to the east, kind of into the golf course area and into the Sherman Creek.
So the drainage from this property would flow to the north, but it would cross Kane Road to the east.
Correct.
And get into the east ditch of Kane Road.
Correct.
Where there's a drainage problem with icing up this winter and backing up into some basements in the condominiums there.
Well, that's what we have to analyze, and that's why we'll recommend the grading and drainage report and how we're going to address that.
Okay. Because I know there were extreme problems out there that cost big dollars.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Mr. Greger?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ness. The TIA, the transportation study that was done, did that take into account a lot of the other road users like bicyclists and pedestrians and how they can access to and from this neighborhood? And I guess what I see as some inadequacies are the Kane Road not having much of a shoulder on it, not having a sidewalk or a trail, and not having bike lanes or anything. And then and I guess I'm kind of wondering what you see happening in terms of the east-west movement of people who are walking or biking. Because as far as I can tell, in my experience as a bicyclist in the area, it's essentially 3 miles between County E to the south and County Line Road to the north that are the only really viable ways to ride a bike or walk through the area because of the freeway for one, but then the North Crossing is just not a safe place to walk or bike. So I guess, did that TIA look into access for people walking and biking?
The draft did not look specific at pedestrian counts or bicycle counts within the development to the west. It could be something that we ask the consultant to follow up on in the future. I would anticipate that, as you had mentioned, without having facilities on County Trunk Highway TT Kane Road right now, there isn't a lot of north-south pedestrian and bicycle activity, but there's potential for it with this large of a development. So it is something that we can request with the update of the TIA.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. This for the city having made their presentation. Oh, Ryan?
I'll just touch base real quick. This commission will be recommending either way to the council, which would be next Monday, October 7th. There is a few conditions that staff would like to note. The plan commission would need to find compliance with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the surrounding land uses. Staff would be asking for a larger transition area as you head to the west with more 2-unit structures potentially between the multifamily and single family. provide also more landscape buffer detail along Kane Road, similar to what the condo association has. Compliance with the engineering report, the preliminary plat and final plat, and then all other aspects will be reviewed with the final site plan. I would note the applicant did meet with the condo association on the east of Kane Road. I believe that was 2 weeks ago. A lot of those members are in the audience, and the applicant is in the audience. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions related to the general development plan, the rezoning, or the land use regarding this project.
Yes, Mr. Peterson?
I have an acquaintance who lives on the east side of Kane Road in the condominiums, and I've talked to him before when this same firm was here proposing their previous development as what they're proposing today. Would the rezoning allow them to put in the 3- and 4-story apartment buildings that
No.
they proposed before?
No, this would be for this, this proposal that's in front of you. Regarding the density, regarding the single and 2-story structures, they would have to come back to this commission and to the council to amend this general development plan to allow for 3- or 4-story apartment complex.
Okay, so as you previously mentioned, we're going to get 2 or 3 more kicks at the cat, so to speak, because they have to come
Yes,
back
but
2 or 3
you'd be,
more times.
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Greger?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this, Mr. Petrie, this may also be for Ms. Ness, but there's the east-west road that's proposed through this development. The details of it, I imagine some of that will be coming with the site plan later, but I guess, one of my concerns would be, it being really the only way for people to walk and bike east-west for a 3-mile wide area on the west side. Do you foresee adding any sort of bike lanes or a bike trail? Because what I see right now is just a street with sidewalks that's kind of built as a neighborhood street. And it even seems like as development occurs in the future that it would become potentially as busy as an arterial street. So how exactly are we rating it, this potential road that goes east-west, and I guess which is unnamed at this point?
Excellent question. I would defer that to Ms. Ness.
We'll be working with the developer on looking at the amount of traffic on that street and defining if it would be a collector or a local street. And then with the east-west connectivity, the sidewalk connection and the multi-use path connections into and around the neighborhood and to the neighborhoods to the west will be looked at within the TIA as well.
As a follow-up
You want to
question.
follow up?
Yeah, I see a Stonewood Drive that has a cul-de-sac on the northwest, just outside of the project area. And I'm just trying to figure out, it doesn't appear to actually connect with this proposed rezoning and this proposed development, but, and maybe the applicant would be able to answer this too, but is there a plan to potentially connect a road between the cul-de-sac at the north end of this development and that, or some sort of trail? Because it seems like it might be good to at least have a trail connection. So I'm not sure if you have an answer to that possibility.
Ms. Nesswood might know.
I don't believe that there is a potential future for the east-west connection to the road due to the existing development that's out there. But I was thinking that there is an existing multi-use trail that is in that western development that has potential to have connection to.
Are there further, yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Petrie, I would like to express my concern about the density. This is certainly an improvement over what I had heard about the earlier plan in 2017. And some pieces of it, for instance, the density along the North Crossing gives, is a nice break. but certainly the density that approaches the Mill Ridge on the west doesn't really meet the large single-family home that our comprehensive plan would explain. So I'm looking for some direction as to how, in this particular meeting, how might we encourage the developer to look at something that was maybe a little bit, saves a lot of what is really good here, but gives a little bit more green space towards the larger homes on the west side.
Excellent question. There's a few conditions that this commission can add, and then that would be going to the council. The applicant, you may want to make suggestions to the applicant. There's a couple of ways you could do that. You could say you want a better buffer zone, transitional land use from multifamily, as you mentioned, and then to the single family. How do you achieve that? That's left up to this commission and to the council. You could also note in there you'd like to see additional landscape buffering between the single family and the multifamily that is proposed. The other option you would have in front of you, you could postpone it with the guidance that this commission would like to see those amendments before it moves on to the next step, which would be city council. Those would be few of the guidance that staff would give to this commission. That would mean a rehearing, and the members of the public would be able to attend that. It'd be brought forward back to this commission before it goes on to the next step, which would be council on potentially next Monday.
Additional questions? Yes, Mr. Peter.
Now, they're allowed 21 units per acre, is it? Or
That is the typical R3 zoning classification.
and they're at 5.4 or something like
With
that?
this, I believe that is correct. With this general development plan, then you're restricting them to 5.4 units per acre. And we will make sure that's in compliance with the site plans that would come forward later date. And that would be throughout the entire development. That's correct.
Okay, and they are showing in the westerly portion on, at least from what I can see on the north half of this property, there's plenty of green space between them and to the west. It maybe get a little tight on the southwest corner, but there's green space in the property to the west, so they're providing their own green space between this property, so.
Additional comments? Thank you, Mr. Petrie. And this would mean that it's time for the applicant to come forward.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our project. My name is Jackie McElroy. I'm the Business Development Manager with SC Swiderski. I'm here today with Nathaniel Pop, our Operations Manager, and April Pankow, our Assistant Project Manager, along with Sean Bowen, who spoke earlier from AEC, and that is the firm that's handling our site engineering, surveying, and stormwater management plan on the site. So between all of us, we should be able to answer any questions you have this evening. Just a little bit about the company. SC Swiderski is a real estate construction and property management company specializing in multifamily housing. So basically, our business plan is to design and build apartments that we retain for our real estate portfolio, and we manage them long-term. So we're long-term investors in our projects. We are headquartered in Mosinee. We've been in business for 27 years. And from our current sites, you can kind of see that we are have a large presence in central Wisconsin. Over the last few years, we've been expanding throughout the state. So we did complete Sturgeon Bay this summer to start our east side region. And in August, we opened our last building in Rice Lake, and that's a 204-unit development on the west side of the state. So we've owned this 135 acres in Eau Claire for several years, and that is going to be our headquarters for our western region. So we plan to have presence on site for that location. Just some of the listings of the current projects that we have completed and have under management, and we do only manage our own properties. Can you slide that down a little bit? Oh, the other way. Go back one. There, perfect. Okay, and a little bit about our process. So I just start with the bottom graphic, happy customers. We're trying to design the best units and provide the best service possible, and so our whole company is built around that philosophy. So we start with acquisitions and real estate. That's the department I work on. We're trying to find the best locations, and we think we found a great one here in Eau Claire. We have our own architecture and design team. So we have the benefit of designing our units based on feedback that we've gotten from tenants over the 27 years, and we have thousands of tenants. So we take that feedback and design the right buildings for the location. And that's why we haven't been back in a couple years. We have some new buildings that we designed for this Eau Claire location that we're trying to introduce on this site. We do have our own construction department. Once the buildings are complete, we hand it over to property management, who takes care of the buildings. We do our own maintenance, and that's how we deliver the service and the products that we are trying to for our customers. On the property management side, we will have on-site management, and it's pretty comprehensive service. So on the leasing side, we do have professional full-time leasing consultants, and they are trained. They adhere to all fair housing guidelines. Our maintenance team does all of the long-term maintenance as well as repairs, and we're able to do about 90% of the work on our units in-house. So it's a very comprehensive maintenance program that we have. We also do our own painting, cleaning, landscaping, snow removal, groundskeeping, and lawn care. And the reason we do that all in-house is so we can make sure that we have quality control and we're taking very good care of our properties. As far as the rental market, I know there's some discussion about healthy housing markets here tonight. So just a few things to note that over 2005 to 2015, there's been a huge increase in the number of renters nationwide. We are also seeing renters at all income levels and age groups. So I know a lot of people think renters are maybe starting out early in their lives, but we see from the graph up there that about 30% of renters are actually over 45 years old. So we need to realize that the market has changed. There's renters choosing renting as an option at all phases of their life and at all income levels. And that's why with this proposal today, we are choosing a housing mix that kind of is meeting that. We're trying to provide options for everybody at all phases of their life and income levels. So another little discussion about the healthy housing market. This is just one example I wanted to illustrate. We had the discussion about the twin homes earlier. To have a healthy housing market, we have to introduce units on the rental side and the home ownership side at all levels. And so this is an illustration of just one unit that we're introducing that can help move your market, and it affects the ownership process as well. So maintenance-free living, we have a one-level building. I think Ryan showed the picture of that. That's going to be on this site with an attached garage. That is an option that is needed in this marketplace. We're hearing from people that we talk to throughout the city that there's people that are staying in their large family homes that maybe are empty nesters, and they're looking to downsize and they don't have enough options for this kind of housing. So by introducing a maintenance-free option for rental, they're able to move out of that large family home. So that also provides an option for someone moving up, possibly from a twin home. As their family grows, they want to move up. Well, now there's a house on the market they can move up to. So we have that, and then somebody might be moving out of a starter home that maybe is taking up a space in a $600 rental. They have the means to move up, but there's no entry-level homes available. So by introducing units at all levels, you can see how it kind of moves the market, and it can have a lot of benefits to your community. On this site, we are proposing about 70% of the units as workforce housing. So we have a lot of units that are going to target your largest population, but we also have some units on the upper end. And so what we tried to do was mirror the income levels in Eau Claire with our rent rates. So we think we're doing a good job of that. We have about 32% of the units are going to be rent rates under $1,000, and then some units on the higher side, and a mix, as we mentioned, all the way up to 3-bedroom units. This is information that was provided previously, so you do know our density level. With the rezoning we're looking for, we could go with a higher density level, but we're choosing to keep it at the 5.2 units per acre. because we want to mirror our neighbors that are to the east that have been very gracious to meet with me several times, the condo owners. That is the density of their development. So we do feel we're providing a nice transition area. And we also know the people we're trying to attract to this community, they appreciate the open space as well. So we want to make sure we're providing a really nice site plan for them. Some of the other considerations we made in here were a future bus stop. So as public transportation hopefully comes to this area in the future, by our community room, we kind of have planned for a bus stop. I know there's been talk about biking trails. We would love to connect if there's future biking trails in this area. We know it's an amenity. A lot of our tenants appreciate. Many of our other sites are on bike trails, so we're hoping that we can do something with you in the future to hook up with that. But as far as pedestrian and connectivity throughout the site, we have 2.7 miles of public sidewalks, so we think that's going to provide a good way for people to move through the site. And the site plan you've kind of looked at. The red is the public road, so you can see that runs from the east-west connection is the main road. We also have public roads going to the north with sidewalks on both sides. We do plan to develop this in phases, so we anticipate starting on the east side on Kane Road and developing those units first. Again, in consideration with our homeowners to the east, we want to make sure that they're not looking at construction over several years. We'll finish that in the landscaping. We will provide a full landscaping plan, but again, we are trying to rent out those units, and our tenants also appreciate when we have a nice landscape buffer when they're backing up to a road. So that will be presented to you. We would complete up to that community room and then likely start the development on the north side moving south. We'll be able to provide our full phasing plan once we finish the site engineering for this project. And then I just had a few images to share. So this is kind of the view as you enter our site from Kane Road. So you can see the public road, sidewalks on both sides. There is a retention pond. So there are several of those planned throughout the site. And we're working closely with AEC and your staff to get that stormwater management plan reviewed and to make sure everything is going to be correct with that. The first units you'll see are these one levels that we talked about. These were designed for this site after we met with the homeowners, I think a little over a year ago. These are one level units that kind of are similar to what they're living in. So when they look across the street, they will see a unit that's the same level as theirs. They have the patios off the back side, and they tend to attract, as we said, a lot of empty nesters, people that are looking for one level living. So we think that's a good transition and buffer area to our neighbors to the east. The community room, Ryan touched on that. That will be on this site, and that's going to house our property management staff. We will have a community room and a fitness room for the tenants, as well as an outside patio area that they can utilize. We do have our maintenance staff right on site here, so you'll see there's a 3-car attached garage, so that would be for the service vehicles, and there'll be a workshop in there, as well as the offices. As I mentioned, this is going to be kind of our headquarters for our western region, so we will have a nice on-site presence here. To the north of the developments, I kind of put the map so you can see. This would be looking south from the highway. We're starting with our workforce housing towards that north part of the development. Within the workforce housing, there's 8 different floor plans, so we really feel we're providing a lot of great options for people that are at that lower price point. Within these buildings, we are also including in the rent rates heat, water, snow and lawn care, trash removal, and high-speed internet and cable. So this is a new thing that we've been introducing in our buildings, and the tenants in this price point really appreciate the convenience of having those added amenities. Then we move further south into the project, and that is our more upscale housing. So these units are 1,300 to 1,700 square feet, and it's a mix of 1- and 2-car attached garages. Again, a lot of different floor plan options for people. One thing that I really like, the Cambria building is another new building for this site. That will be the furthest south building, and it's a townhome style living. And because we have a restriction with the power lines and an easement back there, those people will have a beautiful backyard behind that building. So those are some of our larger units on the site. And through all the price points, we also have main level living. So if there are people that are empty nesters that don't want a big place, we have the main level living in our workforce housing price range as well. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit any of our locations, we do take very good care of our properties. So here's some examples of the finishes that you'll see inside. The finishes will be appropriate to the price point of the renters, but also, as I mentioned, we're in this for the long haul. So you'll see we make a lot of nice choices with our finishes because we are the ones that have to maintain it long term. So that's just some of the examples of our current buildings that we have. Lastly, I just wanted to make note that something that's very important to our company is to become part of your community. So it is a private investment from our owner in your community for this development, and we're hoping to bring you the housing that you need, that we've heard from several sources in Eau Claire that it's needed on all levels. It's also providing a nice property tax base for you. When possible, we utilize local lenders, so we've already met with lenders in Eau Claire that are interested in financing this project. We do have our construction staff, but they will be the general contractor and the project managers on the site, but all subcontractors, labor and trades would be hired locally. So we anticipate this project will have over 300 workers on this site over several years. We do source materials locally whenever possible. Again, that's a great cost savings for us, but we also are trying to invest in your community as much as possible. We will be hiring property management staff to live here on this location, so that would be another opportunity for us to hire locally. We'll have 7 to 10 full-time positions at this location. Lastly, once we're on site, we do host a lot of events because we're really trying to build a community here. So we have tenant appreciation efforts. We host community events right on site. We also encourage all of our employees to participate in the community. So we have a volunteer committee where our local employees get to choose what charitable causes and organizations they want to support, and the company encourages those efforts so they can do outreach. For example, this fall, all of our apartment sites did a collection for school supplies, and they were all able to donate it to their local schools. So those are just some of the things that we'll be doing when we're in your community. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, and as I mentioned, there's a few other people here today, so hopefully we can answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the commission? Mr. Reggert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. McElroy. I guess, what is your company's background with building energy efficient buildings, and have you ever built like any net zero energy buildings, for example?
No, we try to make good choices where we can, and I do have April here from construction. She might have a few other comments about some of the measures that we've taken.
Good evening, April Pink, I'm from Mosinee. So some of our projects that we work on, we always are planning to put boiler systems in, which is a more energy efficient system. We are going into some more of these communities that are wanting us to go ahead and look at more green facilities and things like that. So this is a site that we're hoping to maybe introduce some of that as we move forward and grow into these communities.
Additional questions? Mr. Offerson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McElroy, a lot of what I'm hearing from you is just delightful. The senior transitions, all of these things. One, this isn't specific to your development, but I've heard that you've really spent a lot of time developing a relationship with the HOA on the east side, but the HOA that's on the west side didn't have this kind of conversation and really has some concerns about how they might be impacted. I'm just wondering, as this goes forward, if you're willing to spend some time listening to them and maybe responding in appropriate ways to some of their concerns.
Yes, the direction from our owner is we will always be a good neighbor, so we encourage those conversations. We have been meeting with the owners to the east because at our last meeting, they were the ones that came out, so we wanted to address their concerns first. And I think you'll see that we took off the 3-level building. They were very opposed to that. And some of the other changes, such as the public sidewalks, is going to be a nice change because they mentioned, you know, Kane Road is kind of dangerous for them as well. But yes, we'll definitely meet with the neighbors to the west at any time.
Yeah. I would just add from a commission perspective, when I saw the zone of people that are notified, that HOA didn't even fall into the ones that are notified by the city. So it's unfortunate. Thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McElroy. First of all, I appreciate your commitment towards affordable housing and the statement you made in that area. Do you have any concerns about being able to market that housing given the lack of mass transit, public transit into the particular area?
Most of our sites are not on public transportation, so this is a challenge we're used to. What we find when we build kind of on the outskirts of the community is those people tend to come with cars. So that has been our experience at other sites. Of course, we would welcome having public transportation there, but it hasn't hindered us on any of our other locations.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Anyone? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Just one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, so the community room building, is that available to all tenants regardless of how much they pay or what kind of unit they're staying in?
Correct. It's open to everyone. It'll have business hours, so they'll be able to stop in and meet with the leasing staff that's on site. And currently on our other locations with community rooms, we don't even charge to rent it. We just have a reservation system. So if they are having a party and want to reserve it, we just ask that they clean up after themselves. So yeah, it is open. We see people come into the fitness center. They'll have access with a fob, so they can access that anytime. So that does get used a lot as well.
Further questions, just in case my peripheral vision is short? I think we're set here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the evening. That means that we are open to public comment and question.
Good evening. You just can't help but learn stuff when you come to these meetings, can you? Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Steve Rouse. I'm at 4215 Millridge Circle, resident of the city of Eau Claire, and I am currently the president of the Millridge Condominium Association, already established to be just on the other side of Kane Road. Our association's membership has been kept advised of SC Swiderski's plans, and we are, as a general rule, I think we're very pleased that the development is planned to be a managed residential neighborhood as opposed to being a commercial or industrial development. At this point in their filings, there's really relatively little for us to comment on or bring up as a concern. But we had some recent experiences with unchecked rain runoff spilling over from that property last March. And as a result of that, we are resolved to keep a very, very close eye on Swiderski's plans specifically for the rain runoff, for sewer development, for overall landscaping, especially with the buffer zones, the overall excavations and grading that they're going to have to do, any kind of trenching, and again, the traffic entrance off of Kane Road. Specifically, our attention is focused on the culverts that cross Kane Road. There are 3 of them. We've got one that is a 36-inch culvert that runs from the extreme southeast corner of the subject's property into our ditch. And I apologize, I don't have a map for you. But if you look basically right at that area where the church property ends and the Swiderski property exists, there's a 36-inch culvert that crosses under Kane Road and comes into our ditch. In the past, we've had some problems with that. We've had to build up the area and add rocks to help make sure that we don't have further damage to properties that are just beyond that. We also have a second 30-inch culvert that crosses under Kane Road, and that's at a point approximately 110 feet south of our entrance. I don't have any specifics on how that played with the recent runoff that we had, but I would say that we definitely need to have some very focused attention on how that can be either managed or hopefully eliminated from the plans. The third culvert is down all the way to the intersection with the North Crossing, and it's just a concrete culvert that just runs underneath. It is interesting to note that with all of the water, with those 3 culverts coming across Kane Road, there is no sewer line that is able to handle that water. There is, well, I take it back. There is one kind of like an emergency storm sewer that's in a raised area over to the rental units that are just north of our property. The rest of the runoff comes down and is gradually absorbed, hopefully it's quickly absorbed, into the wetlands area and working off into the, I can't think of the name of the creek offhand, but it's off with the golf course. Anyway, the culverts collect water from the west side, which is city property, and it shoves it all over here to the east side, which is city property, which basically dumps it in your lap. We would love to be able to see the commission's charge in respect to the effective development of Swiderski's site to eliminate any crossover from the west side of the road to the east side of the road. Those are filings that are going to be taking place in the site map and in the 2 plat filings by Swiderski. And if their plans address this and resolve the issues, we will be just happy neighbors too. If not, we'll be back and we will talk to you at future hearings. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the council? Not this time. Thank you very much for speaking.
Good evening. My name is Tom Mihailov, and I live at 4120 Mill Run Court in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And coincidentally, I happen to have been a member of the city council when we annexed all that property from Kane Road almost to the Quick Trip because the developers or the owners at that time wanted access to city sewer and water. I would be remiss in opening my remarks by not saying that the developers, SCS, first came before this commission, I think about 2 years ago in January. The Plan Commission unanimously rejected the plan at that time. We were opposed to it almost unanimously in our development, in our condominium development. Since that time, the developers have come back to us on several occasions and worked with us to come up with a plan that works. You know, in a perfect world, we all get what we want. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect world, or fortunately, it's not a perfect world. And I would be remiss, and you should know that the developers have been very good with paying attention to our major concerns, some of which they can deal with and some of which they can't. And I'll just, Steve touched on those a little bit, and I'll touch on them a little bit more and show you some graphic evidence. We're in a conundrum as an association, and I had the staff pass to you a fact sheet that was prepared by the Corporation Council after we submitted a claim after the flooding that Steve referred to. They, of course, denied our claim, and I think the second paragraph is the one that is related to the conundrum I talked about, is they basically blame the city and say it's not our fault that we piled snow in front of your culvert and forced the water into the basements of, see, where am I here? Okay. How'd you like to wake up to that in the morning? That's one of the 2 basements of the units on the corner that were flooded. when the water had no place to go but into the window wells and consequently into the basements, causing approximately $100,000 worth of damage. You can see from this picture, we're looking north from the culvert that comes across towards our property. And let's see, I got the pictures mixed up. This one is from the culvert, or the entranceway to our property, and this is what we had to dig through, or the fire department, the Eau Claire City Fire Department came out, and NSP, and eventually the county, to dig through to release the water. I can tell you that we're going to be very attentive to that this winter. I've lived there 12 years and it's never happened before, but we've never had 5 feet of snow in a single month before either. But that's one of our big concerns. And it's, as the site plan is developed, you will be hearing from us on the drainage and runoff issue, because what the city, or what the county has told us, is that way back when the city, when the condominium association was first started by Royal Construction, and I see one of the former members sitting here, Tim Olson, that the only thing the county approved was the connection of our development to Kane Road. And frankly, Kane Road is a disaster. And it's one of those anomalies where the road and the drainage ditch are county property, and everything on the other side of them, to a certain point, is in the city of Eau Claire. So who has responsibility? I don't know. But if you have some ability to direct the developers or whoever to design as this development, which most of us are, I can't speak for everybody, but the developers have been very cooperative in overcoming our major objections with 3-story buildings, density, and all those other things that they outlined. And we appreciate that very much because, as I said, they've worked with us after the first attempt failed, and we do appreciate that. So, you know, our condominium association has 150 to 160 people, 98 units, and $100,000 worth of damage that we had to endure this winter is a big ticket item for us. So I thank you for your attention. I thank you for the ability to appear before you tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission?
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for coming forward. I think that
Good evening. My name is David Winter, and I live at 4102 Mill Run Court in the Mill Ridge condo complex. This is kind of a blow-up with North Crossing up at the top and Kane Road here, our complex here, and the new development here. I'm going to be very brief because this has somewhat been covered, but right here is this huge culvert that goes from the edge of the church parking lot, or the edge of the church lot, into our drainage ditch. And it is, well, I have pictures of it. You can see how large the culvert is, and there's the church in the background. On the other end, it's very well concealed. This is on the west side of Kane Road. my concern is that something has to be done, especially with this huge culvert, because it is draining, I'll put up my map again, all of the runoff from the church's parking lots and all of from the hill, and it's all going down and then crossing over into our ditch. And this just, it can't continue. We have so many problems with water now, and then with that thing, with all the snow that melting this spring, it was terrible, as Tom said. I also spoke with Miss Ness on the phone, and she was not aware of that huge culvert, and you were going to look in to see when it was put in and why it was put in. So I'd be interested when I'm finished to hear if you have found out any reason. It boggles my mind to see a culvert that huge. I mean, normally when you have a hill, everybody has their own ditch and it goes to the end of the road. But for some reason, everything was funneled over onto our side, and I don't understand why. What I would like to see, obviously what I think all of us would like to see, is that huge culvert eliminated, either blocked or removed. I know that there is future road development or improvement on Kane Road, and so I would think that it should be addressed before that happens. And also, I wanted to present tonight because if you close that, then our developers, Miss Jackie, might have to redo some of the runoff because she no longer would have all of this free water just pushed over onto our side. She'd have to deal with it herself. As it is, we have enough runoff from the new Mill Ridge Golf Course parking lots that run down, plus all of the other drainage on our side of the hill over here. So we really don't need to drain all of the west side into our property as well. I guess that's it. I thank you for this opportunity to come before you, and do you have questions?
Questions?
Oh, I do want to thank you for your real interest in our drainage problems. I really thank you. And I thank you for addressing the road issue. We have 98 units, probably 140, 50 cars. They have 500 plus units. Kane Road is going to be impossible. But I didn't come here to discuss that, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Hurry up, hurry up. Don't let them beat you again.
I know. Good evening. My name is Gloria Helmbrecht, and I live at 4027 Mill Run Road, and I am the West Ridge Village HOA president. And the members of our homeowners association made decisions to purchase their homes and properties with the understanding that the adjacent property to the east was zoned R2. It was to be an extension of the West Ridge Village Master Association, and the plans included affordable single-family homes, a community center, and walking trails around our Central Park, Prairie, and Pond. As such, the new development proposal to rezone this land to R3P is extremely distressing to us and comes as a recent surprise to us adjacent homeowners. The developer never spoke with the West Ridge Village Homeowners Association about this. They never sat down with us to explain their proposal or listen to our valid concerns. This rezoning would create serious problems for the adjacent residential properties to the west. First and foremost would be the significant increased traffic running through our quiet neighborhood on Mill Run Road. 570 apartment units would create significant traffic flow with a minimum of about 1,000 vehicles, which Ms. Ness did confirm. It would be about 1,000 vehicles, with 20% going down our Mill Run Road. And it would produce significant noise, create safety issues for our residents and our children. And Mill Run Road is not designed to handle that type of traffic. We have a very narrow roadway with large central islands. In fact, 2 vehicles can't even go down the road at the same time because it's just not wide enough. Second, our homes have been designed for open views of pond, park, and prairies. If this proposal goes through, we would see large apartment complexes everywhere to the west at a density of 5.2 units per acre, covering 108 acres. Ms. Jackie said that that's a low estimate at 5.2. They could go higher. We would not like to see it any higher than 5.2. At this time, I won't address all the wildlife issues that would develop with this initial plan, but one of the significant things that we enjoy now are we have 2 nesting mated eagles, and they show up every spring to build their nest along with their 7 juveniles. We had 5 juveniles this year, plus the mom and dad. So we do enjoy having the eagles come to our pond, and with this much activity there, of course, their hunting area would be significantly reduced, and we probably wouldn't see them back. Third, runoff and flooding have been a serious ongoing issue in the park and surrounding area. It is our understanding that the city had originally planned to install an overflow system for the pond that would prevent flooding of the park and adjacent housing. This was never done. The concrete and pavement associated with this proposal would significantly increase runoff, worsening the existing flooding of our park and backyards. And you've been hearing this over and over again with the other HOAs. Because of these issues, our small community of single-family homes would drastically change and would clearly be less desirable place to live. As such, we feel that our property values would go down. Surely there must be a more diverse and balanced way to proceed. Several options come to mind. We could keep the zoning unchanged and promote the continued development of affordable single-family housing as it was originally planned. We could demand a much better mix of housing from the developer, which includes significantly more single-family homes and duplexes in the 108-acre parcel. As you are aware, the plan submitted includes nothing but apartments, a lot of apartments. High-end or not, they're still apartments. If the city insists on improving this rezoning, wouldn't it at least make more sense to have access to these apartment complexes linked to a major highway, 312 to the north, or roadway town hall to the west, instead of running through our quiet neighborhood on Mill Run Road? Regardless of the outcome, installing a pond overflow system to address our flooding is crucial. We also have, I'm the master Bay Home, I'm the master HOA, and under our master we have a Bay Homes HOA. One of our Bay Home residents, Charles Rogers, has a few comments that he would like me to make. The concept of municipal zoning has been around a long time. It's a good concept, and the features and benefits of zoning are many and well known. It allows the municipality to make controlled, deliberate, and well thought through plans for its expansion. It provides for proper planning and budgeting by the municipality for future utility requirements such as sewer and water expansion, for future road and sidewalk construction, and for future emergency and law enforcement requirements. All this is common and accepted knowledge. However, another benefit of proper municipal zoning is less self-evident and seldom discussed. Proper zoning provides confidence for early adopters, those individuals and businesses and entities who are first to purchase and develop previously undeveloped property, that their decisions are grounded in knowing what the future will probably bring. They need to know that their new hotel will not be located next to a factory, for example, or that their new retail store will not be buried in a nearly inaccessible residential development. Proper and consistent zoning provides that confidence. A municipal government must therefore be very careful and rightfully timid about changing their carefully crafted zoning plans without thought of the consequences, intended or unintended. A government to operate efficiently must have the confidence of the people it intends to govern. Some amount of confidence can be lost by changing zoning plans after the fact. A change in-place zoning plans can exhibit not only a certain arrogance and disrespect by the government toward those who have already invested their money based on the in-place planning zone, but it may indicate a failure on the part of the government to be able to zone properly in the first place, and it erodes confidence that future zoning plans can be trusted. I do have, we did send around a petition that is against this apartment complex. And I do have 49 signatures from our HOA members within the West Ridge Village HOA. So I have that paperwork. I can pass it around if you want to look at it. Included are also some requests from our children. Our children were very enthusiastic and wanting to have a voice at this meeting, and I said that they could write you guys a letter and you could go ahead and review them. So, any questions?
Mr. Riggert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Helmbrecht? is that right?
Helmbrecht.
Helmbrecht?
Yep. German,
Thanks for
married a
coming.
German, am a German, you know.
Well, thanks for your leadership in the neighborhood there.
Thank you.
I guess I had I guess your comments were from another person
Yeah,
regarding
Charles Rogers, he's actually here if you want to address him.
great. Well, I guess you might have a thought about it too. My understanding is that the current zoning for about half of this area is multifamily and high density, and then and along with some commercial on the north side. Do you feel pretty strongly about that mix, I guess? Some of it is shown being low-density residential, some of it is being shown as like, higher density, and some of it's showing as commercial. I guess in the long range, I guess it's not actually zoned that way now, but that's kind of the way the comprehensive plan is showing it. What do you feel about that mix versus just having it residential one?
I feel like the current proposal, the mix is uneven, especially since when we bought our properties, we kind of were wooed by 7 miles of walking trails and scenic views and single family housing in the city, but not quite in the city, that kind of thing. I guess to answer your question, if there was a better mix in the apartment complex proposal where there were more homes, we would probably be more receptive to it. But in all fairness, we didn't really find out about all of the intricacies of this until a week ago. So I'm presenting today with only a week notice. And I do, like I said, I do have the homeowners petition where they all signed and were against it because we were never notified, and we do not want to see apartment complexes across our pond. There's a lot of wildlife too that nobody's addressing, and I know for a fact we have geese, coyotes, mallard ducks, muskrats, we've got beaver. So besides the mated eagles, we're concerned about that. We're concerned about when the building starts for the apartment complexes, all those critters will migrate towards us and destroy our property. We have walking paths where this has already happened before, so the burrowing critters go underneath the asphalt for our walking paths and to keep warm, and then they collapse our walking paths. And as a small little HOA with 98 members, we are the ones that have to repair that damage, but everybody in the community uses our walking paths, whether they belong to the HOA or not. So we do have many different concerns. I just wanted to bring up the most relevant ones tonight. I think it could be a better mix. If it's gonna go through, I think more residential homes should be within the plan.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Holmquist, I'm wondering if, with more time to have conversations with the developer, if you would find some way of this being acceptable to you. It sounds like you have been really researching and just trying to get into the conversation.
Correct. I believe that it would be beneficial for us to hear from the developer more information. Bottom line is, though, our water situation is not going to go away. I do have another member from the HOA who's a past president here, and he wants to present some information on what we have been promised as an HOA as far as dealing with our water situation and our runoff. So you can kind of address some of that and those questions to him. But as far as, it would be nice if we had been included as the HOA across the pond. Any other questions?
It seems to be it for questions at this point. Since you've indicated other members of your organization are
Yep.
coming, I think it's worthwhile moving on to the next
Okay.
speaker. If we
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tim Santine, and as Gloria said, I'm also, I live in the same neighborhood, heretofore unmentioned, or the Westridge Village, which we are the unnamed neighborhood to the west of the proposed development. I live at 4023 Mill Run Road. And just to reiterate a lot of the information that Gloria had brought up, a lot of this was all extremely short notice, because until last Tuesday, we had no idea, and I just happened to be on Kane Road and saw the little notice and pulled the form and said, whoa, what's going on? Well, as she mentioned, some of the stuff that is a little upsetting is just not being brought to the table. And, you know, over the years, we've been, I don't know, heard different promises from the city and, well, from other developers too that we've worked with in our neighborhood. And as, you know, potential homeowners, we're looking for, as she said, quiet, kind of in the city but not in the city setting. This subdivision has it all. And a lot of things that are, you know, kind of promised us, we just haven't had accomplished. None of us, I don't think, are against development, but what is troublesome, again, is being late in the conversation at the table here, and now it's kind of hard to believe that some of the stuff is coming up. So the little handout that I provided here actually just recreates, or not recreates, but it just reprints what some of the original plan for the Westridge Village development was, which was originally to be completed, is my understanding, in 2 phases. And phase 1 is, well, where we all live right now. It's the second page of the little handout there, and it's, you know, the more brightly colored stuff. And you can see what the original phase 2 development was on the right-hand side there. That again, as it was zoned, would be many single-family homes and all that. In fact, when this neighborhood was first brought up, it was supposed to be, again, primarily single-family homes, 221 of them, 116 bay homes, 32 twin homes, and 277 townhomes. That's a total of 646 units. You know, as it is right now, there's, I don't know what, probably 50 single-family homes that are developed, and then also the bay homes. And this doesn't include the apartments or the condos that are to the north of the bay there. But anyway, with the proposed 570 some odd units, that's an awful lot on top of what the neighborhood was originally intended to be. As she mentioned, one of the big issues that we've had is with the flooding in the pond. You know, there's typically several months out of the year where a third of the park that is, well, to the east of our neighborhood and to the west of the proposed development is underwater. About a third of it is underwater, where you can't access the walking trail, nor can you get to the playground even sometimes, or the basketball courts that are there. When I was president of the association a few years ago, again, it was so severe, the flooding we had, representatives from the city were out there and we were working with them, and we found out that there had been a plan to install an overflow valve in the lake to avoid this kind of a problem, but that was going to happen with phase 2 of the development of the West Ridge Village community, and that never happened. And so every year we're kind of plagued with some flooding issues that, well, I should say, it does affect the park, which is a big deal, but also when it gets bad, there are several houses that are on the southern end of Mill Run Road that are lower lying, where that water comes dangerously close to people's basements and back doors. So that's something that has yet to be kind of fixed up here, and I've been working, at least when I was the president, this was back in 2014, that we were told that would be taken care of. And, you know, I've included some remarks from other people who weren't able to make it, who had the same concern, that the flooding is a big deal, and the proposed development with that much more runoff is just going to contribute to the problem. And I haven't really heard that addressed. Well, we said that we were going to deal with drainage, but nobody's talked about how severely flooded the park gets and how that's going to affect people's homes, especially when there's that much more space where there's going to runoff be. Again, only having gotten to see this for a couple of days, looking at the plan, a few things that I just wanted to point out that I thought were an issue. In the plan, they show the different entryways, you know, one on Kane and then really transitioning out through Mill Run Road with the potential of one on the north side. That's 3 entrances for 570 units. And they said, well, there's a non-existent bus line out there. I'm excited about a bus stop, that's cool. But no bus stop, no mass transit, and they were saying they rely on cars for transportation for the residents. And that's going to be that many more cars going through 3 exits out of the neighborhood. The original proposal had at least 6 entrances and exits between Kane Road, the North Crossing, and Mill Run. So, I mean, if you took a minute there, you'd see that might help with some of the issues in terms of traffic flow and all that. I'd also be interested to hear a little bit more about like school buses and what's going to happen for the schools and people moving around, as well as garbage and navigating through Mill Run. And like Gloria said, there's room for 1 car. You know, the garbage trucks can fit. Sometimes the plows have issues, but anyway, that was one thing I wanted to make sure that I brought up. Again, that increased traffic is a big concern. My daughter was here. It's the school nights. They all had to leave. But when I showed her the map, you know, she asked, like, can we ride our bikes? I'm like, I don't know how comfortable I feel with you on your bike when there's 300 cars an hour coming and going, because that's not what this neighborhood has been sold as. And I really like our neighborhood. And I really like the walking paths and trails where my kids can ride their bikes, but that is going to be something that would change for sure for the detriment of our kids' safety. I guess that was kind of sorry for rambling, because Gloria did a much better job of talking about this stuff. But there are quite a number of my neighbors here too. I don't know if they want to stand up so you guys can see that we did sign a petition, but there are a number of people here who just found out about this that were a little, you know, they wanted to be heard. So that's why we came. And I especially appreciate being able to speak, however rambling, and thank you for your time.
Questions this time? I think having provided the paper copy, it's probably answered quite a few of the things we
Thanks,
might
sir.
have said.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Others who'd like to speak?
I'm Ron Walsh, 4001 John Hart Place in the West Ridge Village Edition, and Gloria and Tim did a great job. I just want to reiterate, I just wrote some quick notes, the purpose of zoning, and that was hit. You know, that with the development, nobody talked about what's on the west side of our village are the duplexes that were built in the 70s as part of the Menards project, all those duplexes. And you know that when this development was built, that if that were planned for the other side, the more multi-families, that there probably would have been a different focus on what would have happened. So I think just remembering what the purpose of zoning is, and to change zoning that affects the next door neighbor, there should be input there. So I appreciate your suggestion of having them talk to us, and I hopefully that will be welcomed. I agree that Mill Run is not, as a road, is not designed for heavy traffic. It's two individual lanes, one going north, one going south, with islands in the middle, and it's hard to back a pickup into a driveway there. And, one suggestion I had to at least think about would be, as far as rezoning, would be to take approximately that west half of that project and keep that R2, so that there's still a cushion of at least some single-family units there, but just as a thought. But the other thing, is it Gregert brought up the biking. I'm probably the idiot you see on the North Crossing every day. I bike any day it's above 10 degrees and the road's clear. And for me to get to the trails in Eau Claire, I have to get onto the North Crossing. I jog off by the technical college there and take a deep breath, and thank God I got there. But I actually feel pretty safe on that far right side, but only for that little mile and a half. But Keene Road is a terrible road. I've never biked there because I drive there, and it's tough to. It's even tough to drive on because a couple of the ridges that you go over, you really have to be careful driving. I can't imagine riding a bike. So it's something for you folks to think about is, and thank you, Jeremy, for bringing that up. Is a lot of people. Recreation's a big part of their life. I know not everybody likes bikers, but there's just a lot of bikers, and it's an important aspect of people's lives, and that should be considered too. So, thank you very much.
Questions? No. We're getting pretty well covered here. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Sean Boyan, 1504 Sherwin Avenue, Eau Claire. I'm going to be responsible with the dubious task of taking care of the stormwater for both the east side and for the west side. We have gone through and started to analyze some of the stuff. Some of the things are out of our control. It's a county road. The county is going to control the size of those culverts and whether they can be removed or not. We're certainly going to take care of our stormwater. We're going to be releasing at the rates that the city mandates. I'm glad that I'm getting some of the information from the west side, and knowing that there ended up being some issues with their large stormwater facility, because we can certainly end up taking a look at that. There is a good portion of our site that ends up actually draining to the north and to the west, along with the stuff on the east side. So we'll start to look at it, we'll start to analyze it, we'll work with staff, we'll work with the county also on seeing what we can possibly do with any of the culverts that cross Kane Road. I did end up touching base with the county commissioner because Kane Road is going to be improved over the next couple of years, and I was trying to get from them a commitment of at least what that road section would look like, whether they were going to widen it out. Certainly not widen the right-of-way, that's fixed, but certainly just seeing if they're planning on widening it out, whether we're still going to be ditched. Plus, we're going to have some improvements that we need to end up doing out on Kane Road also. So they're looking at that with the TIA that's been mentioned, whether we need to provide turning lanes and stuff like that from 312 going to the south and then into the subdivision. So we're certainly going to be working with them. We're just starting, to get all the players involved in the sense of reaching out to them, talking to them about, the different things that need to end up being done. One thing I did want to point out is the site is over 100, and I think it was like 136 acres, and there's 25 of it, about 20% of the site that they're looking at leaving into the single family. They're not looking at trying to go through and do an R3P on the entire thing. So there is that section on the west side, on the southwest side, that we're looking at, still remaining in that R2P. In addition, I know there's comments about a better transition from the multifamily to the single family. We do have a couple of twin homes there, but there is a large stormwater facility that we're looking at having at the intersection of the east-west road that would end up then connecting to Mill Run. So this stormwater facility ends up actually being, a good transition area also where you don't end up having that multifamily, right up against single family. So we think that, we end up having a good product, that the density, is there. It's a very low density for the R3P. The stormwater is obviously something that we're going to address. And, we appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Yes, Mr. Renholt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm about as far from being an engineer as you can be, so bear with me on the question. But is it safe to say, we've obviously got a drainage problem in this whole area. Is it safe to say that the drainage has a better chance of being addressed by developing that than it's going to be just leaving it?
I guess just leaving it, they're going to continue to have the issues. We have the opportunity to end up, helping them out. There is a number of stormwater facilities that are being planned for this. If you end up looking at the density, you have only like 5.2 per acre over, the 100 and, was it 18 acres or something like that, or 108 acres. There's an opportunity for a lot of green space. And with that green space is the opportunity for a lot of stormwater facilities. So.
Additional questions? I think we're...
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments from the public?
Good evening. My name's Judy Mosley. Many of you have seen me before. I am the co-chair of the Jonah Affordable Housing Task Force, and we've talked a lot in the last year about affordable housing and the need for it in the city. So I'm quite sure that you are all very well educated about that. And I thought, when I read the article this weekend on this, I read the headline and I was all prepared to be totally against this development, but then I read more of the details and I thought, that's not a bad plan. I really liked the fact that the developer made an effort to include the median household income and to include that this is really defined as workforce housing. I like the fact that when their first proposal was denied, that they went to their neighbors and said, how can we fix these problems? That's a good omen. And I have all the confidence in the world that they're going to work with their neighbors to the west to also alleviate some of those problems. But when we talk about median household income and rent rates that are affordable to those in the 60 to 120% of that household income charts, that's a big thing. It's a really, really big thing for a developer to be proposing a development of this size in which 2/3 of the units are affordable for workforce people. And I think that this particular location is really good for this kind of housing and at this density. And the reason I say that is because when I look around this area, I see nursing homes, which I don't know about you, but the nursing home staff that I know don't make a huge amount of dollars. They're in it for caring for clients. They're not in it to become rich. There's the people that work at the golf course. There's the students, the faculty, and the support staff at CVTC. There's a bank in the area, and as much as you'd like to believe otherwise, bankers don't make much money. At least the clerical staff in banks don't make much money. There's that huge Menards distribution center with lots and lots of employees who are not wealthy. There are gas stations in the area. There are hotels. There's a truck dealership. There's a countertop manufacturing company. And we keep saying that we want more of these kind of businesses in our community. We want economic development. We want more small manufacturers. We want more distribution centers. But in order to get them, we have to have housing for those workers. And we are not going to get enough housing for those workers by building one single-family house at a time across the city on infill lots. Sometimes we have to take a deep breath and do something bold, and sometimes we have to go for greater density. And I think that this is one of those developments where the greater density is called for, and it makes sense. I'd like to see a few of the units set aside for that 30 to 60% of median income group, but I'm so thrilled by having 2/3 in the upper unit that I won't make that an objection. I want to see that this developer is going to be accountable to the city through the developer agreement for following through on their promises. And I was really pleased to hear that the figures that they're using for that affordable rent include utilities, because that's big. It makes a huge difference to a worker's monthly budget. And I'd love to see a bus route come here, but the bus route doesn't come until the people are already here. So we'll work on that for the future. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And have we run the full circuit of public comment yet, or is there yet another?
I'm going to be quick. Now's my chance. Francis Rutz, and I live at 4281 Mill Ridge Circle. I want to go back to that Stonewood a second. And as I sit here listening to this, I see that that could be a solution, or at least part of the solution, if we can get traffic, to bring those two cul-de-sacs together. The highest density, I believe, on this development is on the north side, and with the proposed development, they're either going to be part of that 80% that go to Kane Road, or all the way down to the south side and then all the way back up again. If we can get that connected, those people, or a lot of that people, can go directly to Mill Run Road and right out onto 312, not be going down the streets where the single-family houses are, and that as they would have to, without that going through. Also, cul-de-sacs, and right now there's one there. Now you're going to have two in that area. I think we all know they're not good for snow plowing. Go down, try and get your truck turned around, come back. They're not good for emergency services. You get a fire truck down on the end of one of those things, and a couple of these are pretty long, and they have a hard time getting turned around and, and out. The development plan should be through streets. So I guess I just want to quickly say that I'd really hope that we can go back and take a closer look at that and see if there is a way that we can turn that into an exit to the north there, or northwest. Thank you.
Any questions from the council? I see none. Thank you very much, sir. With that, I believe we're at the point where we are looking for a motion. And I recall there were several options given for motions and several adaptations that were mentioned earlier. So I am quite curious as to how the motion will be phrased.
Mr. Chair, I wonder, I would like to propose that this be postponed until our next meeting, giving an opportunity for the developer to speak to the HOA on the west side. I heard a lot of conversation, I think advanced the conversation this evening, and I think that we could full-heartedly recommend this to council if we had just that piece of time.
One more opportunity for them to
So
speak to each other.
that would be my motion.
Second.
Looks like we have a motion and second, and it's time for discussion on this. I've been holding on to an email here from the council person Wolfgram, and since this is the comment period, I'll just take this opportunity to read her comments. And I know that some of them are questions, but I say that with the variety of comments already, I'll just read straight through it and see if there's replies. Please represent my questions to items number 3, the Swiderski development, to the applicant, and request that my questions be in response be read into the minutes. Since our minutes do not have content, I would like the city council to be able to reference them. She would like to acknowledge Swiderski's investment in our community's need for workforce and affordable housing. The Chippewa Valley Affordable Housing recommendations on page 31 states that we create prioritized redevelopment areas and programs to facilitate higher density in nodes and corridors well served by transit, not mass transit, infrastructure, and amenities. This is a suitable location for high-density development. Her questions are as follows. Please clarify affordability that for the 60 to 120% of CMI, no more than 30% of income, including utilities, will be paid for rent. What is your plan to do income verification and your property manager? I guess these are questions for the developer. Are you working on a plan to graduate rents based on size of apartment with maximum being of the 30% of income? For example, 30% of the 60% CMI would be $969 a month. Would this be rent charged then for a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, and a 1-bedroom would be less than that? How would the applicant be accountable to the city for follow-through on their plan if the rezoning is granted? I appreciate your attention. I guess, would you like to reply to those? Are they beyond the scope of this point in the plan?
I can talk to the rent rates. When we do calculate the rent rates, we are including utilities, as I mentioned. Our tenants, we income verify them, and they do have to qualify for 3 times of their monthly income for the rent rate. So we are checking that on all of our tenants, and that's a fair housing thing. So that policy is listed on our website, and we do have to apply it across the board. As far as changing the rent rates, it goes by building style and the square footage. So as we mentioned, the lower priced units are going to be the smaller square footage. And as the units get larger, that's how the rent rates are determined by the finishes and also the size of the unit.
I think that probably answers those questions. Thank you very much. So, do we have discussion? Yes, please.
Go ahead. I just, I'd like to add that I think it only fair that neighborhood to the west have some input, especially considering the drainage issues. So I don't know if we can include that in this or if it would come up later on.
This is the motion to postpone.
Okay.
So I think that's the intent of the postponement. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like, certainly the neighborhood can add, add to the discussion in a more meaningful way, I think, in a venue directly with the developer in the next few weeks here. I do think, there's obviously a lot of transportation challenges in here that hopefully we can have some more answers to as well within a few weeks. I know, as was referenced by a few folks today, the county is looking at redoing Kane Road and Highway Double T in the next few years. I do actually have a question about that, if it's appropriate for Ms. Ness at this juncture too, and that would be, since I did correspond with our county highway commissioner on it, but he said that that road would be transferred. It would meet City of Eau Claire standards as part of a jurisdictional transfer agreement. So I guess if Ms. Ness could answer what that means exactly. Does that mean that the road becomes a part of the city?
The city has been working with the county on if that would become a jurisdictionally transferred to the city. The city would operate and maintain the roadway. We would ask that it be built to our standards. I think we're working through some other maintenance items as well with them, with a potential agreement for future improvements to the roadway.
Other comments? Yes, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, if you do choose to work with your neighbors to the west, one of the things you can discuss with them through the advanced engineering concepts is look at the traffic split with people coming to and from the development, and look at their easiest way in and out. And I will guarantee you most people are going to be going to Kane Road. It just seems logical. So speak with them. I know some of their concerns were traffic coming up their road that was under-designed maybe, and wouldn't take that traffic. And if I was living in the development, I wouldn't want to go through that area. I'd take the easiest way out, and that's Kane Road to me. So, but work with the people to the west. I agree to postpone, and hopefully they can satisfy the neighbors to the west as they've satisfied the neighbors to the east.
Okay, further comments and questions? I think we'll entertain a vote on the postponement of this item. Those in favor of postponement?
Aye.
Those opposed? Looks like the postponement has carried. So with that, we are on to our item number 4. The request for approval of a site plan for a parking lot expansion. Well, excuse me, can you please restrict your commentary till you get out in the hall? Thank you. We'd like to finish our agenda quickly now, too. This is our last item on the agenda. What? I believe we postponed at one meeting.
Correct, that's how I understood it, to postpone to the next meeting, which would be October 14th.
Yeah, essentially 2 weeks until our next meeting. All right, so with a little less noise in the background, this is a request for approval of a site plan for a parking expansion at Indian Head Food Service Distributor at 2511 Galloway Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is number 4, east side of Eau Claire, Indian Head Food Service. Unfortunately, the applicant had to get going. He hasn't eaten dinner yet, and it was getting a little late. So I'll represent the applicant as well. It's for Indian Head Food Service at 2511 Galloway Street. It's across from the main campus. Hastings Place LLC is the applicant. Everyday Surveying and Engineering is the surveyor on the site. The parcel is approximately 1.6 acres. They're proposing to remove the existing building and pole sign and put a parking lot in. The current employees do park there. Some of the surface is gravel, some of it's paved parking, and then the building obviously is going to get removed. The current zoning is I-2, and before you is the proposed parking lot. Attached in your packet is the site plan. Again, the zoning is I-2. The site plan shows the removal of the existing storage building and to add 86 parking stalls. As I mentioned, currently the employees are parking on the site. The applicant would like to add more parking because they're planning on future expansions across the street. The existing pole was allowed there with the building, but when you remove a building, I'll show you, when you remove the building on the south side of Galloway Street, that sign actually becomes off-premise. The reason being is because they own multiple parcels, and the road would divide this parcel with the main campus of Indian Head Food Service. So with that being said, the applicant did decide, rather than applying for a conditional use permit in front of this commission, they decided against that, and they will remove that pole sign, making it have no pole sign at the location. The proposed parking lot will add a landscape buffer along the bike trail. Currently, right now, it's all paved up to the right-of-way line. This will be similar to what's on the north side of Galloway Street. The parking lot also does note street trees and parking lot trees. A pedestrian connection from this parking lot is shown on the proposed site plan. The applicant assured me tonight, as he was leaving, that this driveway will be reduced down to 30 feet, which is the maximum. And that will not be, I think it's 41 feet shown on the site plan. That would be reduced down 11 feet to 30 feet. Light fixtures shall be downcasted if they are proposing parking lot poles, which they are. The grading and drainage is noted in your report, along with public utilities, traffic. I did mention the driveway, actually it was approximately 45 feet at the existing. They'll be reducing that down by 15 feet to 30 feet, and we'll get that with a revised site plan. Also, transit is noted in the report. They do have access to it. There's a few conditions that need to be met. Approval of the grading and drainage. And number 2 will be removed with the revised site plan. And I just noted in the report, the existing pole sign will also be removed. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions for this proposed site plan.
I don't, yes, Mr. Gregor, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Petrie, one of the questions that I had via email earlier was about the condition of the trail there, and I understand it has to be back of curb because the city does not own the right-of-way enough to have it be moved back. And I certainly appreciate this buffer here of the trees between the lot and the trail. But the question I had that I'm not sure I'm satisfied with is the condition of the trail being cracked in a lot of areas, partly because it was directly adjacent to their lot, and I think it was because it was being driven over by trucks. So I'm just trying to figure out if this whole trail could actually get reconstructed, or parts of it, other than just the driveway apron areas, because it really has been, I think because of the weight of vehicles driving on public right-of-way on a sidewalk, has been damaged.
Yeah, excellent question. I'm not sure if the city engineer has any comment on that. Personally, we could ask. The reason why is because I believe I've driven that on my bike as well, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I think what happened is, large trucks are dropping off supplies and everything. They're paved all the way up to the path right now. So, was it their fault or was it somebody else's fault? I don't know, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, Ms. Ness?
My initial thought was that it's within the public right-of-way, and it would be the city's to maintain because it is within the public right-of-way and it is a city trail. It's infrastructure that we placed in conjunction with the project, with the expectation of the city maintaining it. So I wouldn't expect the applicant to have to address this. I did reach out to our Parks Department earlier today too to confirm if this section was anticipated to be replaced in the near future, and they said this section is not on the 5-year plan for trail improvements at this time.
I guess my follow-up comment on that would be that, essentially because you can see the building in that view, it's very difficult for vehicles to get between that public trail and the building without driving actually on a place where pedestrians are supposed to feel safe, hopefully. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the cracking, and there's even a partially collapsed storm drain there, partly because of that. And when I'm looking on, in fact, when I look on the Google Street View, it looks like it's, at least from July of 2018, it was quite routine that any vehicles parked in those kind of angular parking spaces would just drive straight off the curb and into the road. And those are people presumably associated with the business. And that may be contributing to some of the cracking that we're seeing, so maybe there's a way to make it a request.
It makes sense. I mean, I do believe that they're gonna rip this all up as well. I mean, because they're gonna have to repave the entire thing. They're not just gonna pave a portion of it. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them if they do rip up our portion of our trail that they have to replace it with new. I don't think that's an unrealistic request at this time, and we can put it right in the conditions, in my opinion. They'll be doing work in the right of way anyways because they're gonna have to redo their driveway. I mean, they're shrinking it down from 45 to 30. And they also will be removing the rest of the pavement within that area. So I don't think it's unrealistic. I don't know how staff handles that. But I guess it would be no different than any other right-of-way permit. I'm looking at Ms. Ness because her department handles those, but they're gonna have to get a right-of-way permit, in my opinion, to reduce the driveway width. So this plan commission does have the authority to add a condition saying the trail should be replaced with similar like conditions. But the conditions are, it's in rough shape. Maybe if they disturb the existing trail, they need to replace it to city standards, something along those lines. And you have the authority to do that, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, could I just
Yes, go ahead.
have somebody interpret for me? We're talking about the trucks that we see on the triangle have been possibly driving over the trail that's on the street side of that building?
I think
Is that what we're kind of assuming here?
Well, I think what Mr. Gregor's mentioning is in between the building and the trail on the north side of the building, if they're going to go to the west of this building or the northwest of this building, they're driving over the existing trail. It is paved from the building to the trail currently.
Additional comments? Mr. Peterson.
Even though it said authorized vehicles only, I drove in the west driveway and went out their east driveway.
So Mr. Peterson's responsible for the trail being disrupted.
I drove past that northeast corner of their building. I didn't have to go on the trail.
Yeah.
Pickup truck can go through there, doesn't have to go
But
on the trail.
a semi-truck potentially would have to.
But I know the semis look like they load from the east, and maybe they come in that west driveway and go past the building and then back up. You know, rather than, if they came in that east one, it'd be very difficult for them to turn around to back into there. But what I think we could have them do is, they would certainly be responsible where they're tearing out their west driveway and removing that. They would be responsible for any damage they do to the trail there. They'd certainly be responsible for any damage they do at the new entrance, which is gonna be the same as probably their east entrance. And if they could do it out of the goodness of their heart, you know, as long as they're working on those two sections, the section in between with the damaged area isn't that much more for them to do, and it might be something out of the goodness of their heart. It is on public right away. It's our purview to keep it up to snuff, not theirs. The other thing to do is, if it isn't in a capital improvements budget, if they're gonna be in there doing all that paving, we can get a pretty good price to repair our portion of the trail that we don't hold them responsible for. So I'm sure it's something we could move up.
Anything else? I think without other comment, we move toward a motion. Yes, sir.
So I'd make a motion to approve, but with the condition that their staff work with the developer to see if they would be interested in helping the city with repairing any damaged parts of that trail that are adjacent to this property.
I'll second that.
All right, so commentary and discussion? Sorry, discussion? All right, I think we'll put it to the vote. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So that brings us to our last few general items of review for the, any code compliance items? Any future agenda items people want to assure are written into our future agenda? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, or Mr. Chair this evening, I apologize. I may defer to Mr. Petrie as well. I believe we had one application come in for the October 14th. Is that correct?
Four applications.
4 applications, off by a few. 4 applications come in, plus the now the postponement of the Z165-319. And that being the case, since there are since it's a pretty full agenda, we had talked about having a affordable housing discussion. I would recommend deferring that for the next meeting. And I believe Mr. Petrie has more to add.
As the applicant was leaving tonight, they don't know if they'll be able to meet with them in the next 2 weeks, because that would be a 2-week notice. So they might be we'll confirm with them tomorrow, but it might be the first meeting in November. But I'll clarify with the applicant. For sure, it's postponed to council. We'll confirm with the applicant.
Thank you. And yes, good reminder as well, there's just the one meeting in October due to the kind of the unusual timing of these meetings here. So just the one meeting in October. And yes, it is the one Monday night Packers football game in October.
Oh, the 14th?
Is October 14th. So anyway, so just keeping that in mind, maybe we could, it's maybe possible to have a 20-minute meeting. That may not be technically appropriate, but appreciate the
efficiency of that suggestion.
Enthusiasm and yes, urgency, of course. So anyway, just FYI on that. So yes, thank you, Ryan. There are four items. Again, I guess we'll clarify this and let everybody know in advance of the meeting status of the postponed item, and that should be it.
All right. Any additions or corrections to the minutes from last time? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Good job, Greg.